Hello, I'm Jonathan Milam here with a review of a nice Flugelhorn. This is a Weril Regium 2, relatively unknown. In fact, off and on, I'd looked for a Weril trumpet for some time. I'd heard good things about them, made in Sao Paulo, Brazil. And the Regium was a well-liked horn. The Regium 2, from what I've been able to see, was perhaps even a step better. So I was able to pick up this Flugelhorn, probably patterned very much after the popular Yamaha 631. Seems like most Flugels that have been made recently have used that as a copy. I had a Yamaha, in fact I've had two Yamaha 631s. I had one for probably 20 years and then I picked up another one a few years after I sold the first one. I'm not really impressed with Flugelhorns for one reason. The intonation on them is much more challenging than trumpets. And if I'm going to be playing, it's usually going to be in a large sanctuary church situation. I do want something that cuts through, and Flugels usually don't. But at any rate, between the intonation and my lack of need for one, I don't often have a Flugel on hand. Always curious, usually frustrated by them, but I do like this Flugelhorn. And I'll tell you one reason why. On most Flugels, if the intonation on a trumpet is not perfect, and it really technically cannot be, it's going to need the intonation aid of a sliding third pull or first pull, and usually both for the first and third valves. But you get Flugelhorns and the intonation is a little bit more challenging. You really need a trigger. And one thing I like about this Weril is not only can you pull it up to the third valve, but you can take it considerably on. You pull this all the way out between both sides of the slide, you've probably got almost 3 inches of pull there, which is very good. That's just a very nice feature. The grip that I use for it is splitting my hand like this and then using my third finger on the trigger mechanism. I'll usually pull it at least this far, and then oftentimes if I feel the intonation needs it, the remainder of the way. You just have a lot more room to negotiate tuning than on a lot of Flugels. The bell size on this is about 6 inches. The bore is supposed to be about 435. Yamaha's is .433. Stainless steel valves, which have a very good feel. I think a lot of times when you get a Flugel and you play on it, you hear that sound just sounds louder than a trumpet. And I believe the reason is they usually have welded the valve block against the bell. You've got a bigger bell. So in the silence of a room, you can feel like, oh, those are loud valves. But really, when you're playing, I don't think it's noticeable at all. These valves have a good feel, like the slide, like the intonation, and I like the sound of this Flugel. So we'll see. Now, usually I've done Flugel videos before. I mentioned the spread doesn't always come through. So I'm going to stand a little further back when I play part of the Flugel and try and get you to be able perhaps to enjoy the spread a little bit more. For now, we'll just give you an idea of the basic sound of the instrument. For a mouthpiece, I usually mention I'm using a Marcinkiewicz 5 FLB. And Marcinkiewicz actually puts two mouthpieces out, a B like Bravo and a D like Delta. The B is for a slightly brighter sound. I just like it with this horn. The D probably has either a slightly larger cup or a slightly larger throat, backbore size. I'm not sure which. It's not easy to tell just by eyeballing it and feeling it. But I really like the Marcinkiewicz mouthpieces, especially for Flugel. I've used them for years on and off with trumpet as well. But one of the great things about a Flugel is the low range. And so we'll give you here around the low C and just a little bit lower. They do have 4-valve trumpets. They have 4-valve flugelhorns. The 4th valve on a flugel I've always wondered about. I've never had one. But since the lower range, because of the large mouthpiece and the large bell, is so much fuller, I really think a 4th valve on a flugelhorn would be an interesting concept. I think you could walk all the way down to your pedal tones and actually use that as usable range. When you get into the upper register, it's not so beneficial. That's just not the strength of a flugel. Screaming on it is really, I don't think, making the most of the tools of the instrument. Nonetheless, we'll give you an idea of the upper range. You've got a high C, that gives you an idea. Very good sounding flugel to my way of thinking. And now we'll try it with the old standard When the Saints Go Marching In. We could go on, and I'd really love to, but for the purposes of presentation, you've seen enough. A Weril Regium 2. I'm impressed with this flugelhorn. Hope you've enjoyed the review. Have a great day, and as always, God bless.